Lenovo's ThinkStation lineup has just been joined by a family of three. The new Trio stands out as perhaps some of the most stylish workstations we've ever seen, and their good looks are matched not just by top-end performance, but also by incredible practicality in terms of hardware design. In ascending order of awesomeness, we've got the ThinkStation P5, P7, and what Lenovo considers the pinnacle of their technology, the ThinkStation P10. All three of these machines are very much targeted at top-tier users, so professional industries with extremely demanding workloads. And when you get to something like the P10, we're talking about the sort of server-grade machine you would run a data center with. There's a huge range of configurations for these, so depending on what you need and what tasks you would be using them for, you could really customize your order to fit the workflow. Unconventionally, these three workstations do look above average in terms of styling, for their category at least, and the reason for that is they were designed in collaboration with none other than Aston Martin. Now, last time I checked, a twin-turbo V12 was not a configurable option for these, unfortunately. But you do get a good dose of supercar-inspired design elements, especially that intake grille up front. This is, however, beyond simply aesthetics. Just like a supercar, airflow to the components is crucial, and you can see the designers have clearly taken that into account the moment you look beneath the panels. From the P5 to the P10, the CPUs are cooled by a passive heatsink, with the heat being carried away using only airflow channeled through the chassis. The other key design aspect for these three new ThinkStations is how access to components were made to be completely toolless. They've combined this aspect beautifully with the visual design of the product. I'm speaking about the iconic red accents we all know on the Think series products. And on these new ThinkStations, the red also serves to guide the user along its user-serviceable parts. If you're looking to release a certain component, just find the red bits and that'll be exactly what you need to interact with to release it. It's an incredibly seamless integration of both form and function. All three of these ThinkStations also come with a diagnostic LCD display on the front panel. Now, most of the time you're just going to see the time and date on it, but when the time comes to troubleshoot, you'll be really glad it's there to check for error codes. A nice touch Lenovo's done as well is have a nicely labeled layout of the motherboard printed on the inner side of the panel covers. And just like supercars, underneath the hood is where things get interesting. We'll definitely pop the hood and have a look under each of these workstations, but the star of the show today is very much the ThinkStation P10. But these two little siblings are no slouch by any means, so we will build our way up to this, beginning with the workhorse that is the ThinkStation P5. The P5 is designed as a 33-liter tower running a single Intel Xeon W2400 series processor. This unit I've got here is running an Intel Xeon W5 2455X, although you can configure this up to a Xeon W7 2495X, offering 24 cores up to 4.8 GHz. In terms of options for graphics cards, you can order your P5 with up to 2 NVIDIA RTX A6000s. With 8 DIMM slots available, you can max out the RAM at 512 GB of 4800 MHz DDR5 ECC memory, 2 onboard NVMe M.2 slots for your SSDs, and there are 2 bays for 3.5-inch SATA hard drives. You do, however, have the option to configure extra storage bays for the P5, with the maximum configuration allowing up to 48 TB of storage on the P5 internally. Now, inside, the P5 might look somewhat conventional, but you'll certainly find some useful design touches exclusive to these new ThinkStations. Take the power supply, for example. Just pull back on the red lever and the whole power supply just slides out, quick release style. It's not a component which I imagine will be replaced very often, but if it ever does get replaced, you can see it's not going to take much time or much fuss at all. Notice how internally, there aren't even any cables connected directly to the PSU. Above our sticks of RAM, we'll find yet another intriguing bit of design. There's a special airflow duct which channels air through the RAM and pumps it out the rear of the chassis using 2 small fans. This is in addition to the main intake and exhaust fan for the rest of the P5. So very impressive machine indeed, but we are just getting started with the lineup because one step up and we've got the the P7. This now takes things even further in a slightly meaner package. It now runs Intel Xeon W3400 series processors, giving you a maximum potential of 56 cores up to 4.8 GHz with the Xeon W9 3495X. Instead of 2 discrete GPUs, the P7 can be configured to a maximum of 3 NVIDIA 6000 Ada GPUs. That, of course, is a result of the board having quite a bit more to offer in terms of PCI Express expansion slots. You now also have the option to populate all 8 DIMMs with 128GB sticks of RAM, giving you a maximum possible RAM of 1 TB. Internal storage can handle 1 hard drive more than the P5, maxing out higher at 52 TB. Now, it all sounds like the P7 is just a spec-bumped P5, but that is very incorrect. Because starting with the P7, the ThinkStations can be rack-mounted, and the hardware design accommodates that. The 39-litre P7 takes up 4U of rack space. First order of business when this is laid horizontal is the ThinkStation logo can be rotated so it's always right side up. Now, I know it's not exactly the kind of feature that helps with performance, but I can guarantee you it will make you a much happier user. The rack optimizations, of course, don't just stop there. In addition to the main power button up front, there's also a rear power button. As standard, you get 2 RJ45 Ethernet ports on the P7. One of them is a gigabit port and the other 10 gigabits. This is in contrast to the single gigabit port we had on the P5. Now, inside, you can see the P7 takes a slightly different approach to actively cooling the RAM. There's a dedicated fan over each group of 4 DIMM slots. Again, the assembly containing the fan can easily be removed by pressing on the red. You'll see plenty of these red tabs in the P7, but you'll see how much more insane things get over on the P10. Yes, we are saving the best for last. Of the 3 new ThinkStations, the P10 is the most scalable of them all. Here, we're very much moving into server territory, and this system can be scaled to insane proportions because this runs on 2 4th-generation Intel Xeon Scalable processors. From the moment you remove that side panel from the P10, just one look, and you know this is something else. Let's first paint a picture of how far you can take this machine. Now, this review unit, which Lenovo has loaned me, is what I would consider a mid-range configuration by P10 standards. Dual Xeon Silver 4416 Plus processors, 20 cores each, a single RTX A2000, 128GB of RAM, and 1 TB of internal storage. However, its full potential can be reached with 2 Xeon Platinum 8490H processors, that's 60 cores each, giving you a combined 120 cores, and because it has 2 CPU sockets, it has an obscene 16 DIMM slots, allowing you to fit up to 2 TB of RAM in this thing. The P10 can also house up to 4 NVIDIA RTX 6000 Ada cards, that's 48GB of VRAM per card. As a content creator now, what I usually use a computer for is video editing. And typically, I would not come to this extent when looking for an editing machine, simply because most video editing softwares would not be able to take advantage of the sheer quantity of cores available. That being said, for tasks where multi-core performance is preferred, the P10 would absolutely chew through those workloads. Look at it just destroying this benchmark in Cinebench. This P10 rig racked up close to 50,000 points in Cinebench's multi-core benchmark, and this isn't even the highest configuration available. Remember, you can have up to 120 cores in this thing, so just imagine a 3D workflow utilizing a CPU renderer with the P10. But even if your workflow makes better use of GPU rather than CPU, say you're using a GPU accelerated renderer like Redshift, or you're running GPU accelerated simulations, the P10 also spoils you by having the option of up to 4 discrete GPUs. So, an insanely powerful machine this can be, and speaking of power, the P10 is the only model among these 3 with the option of dual redundant power supplies. This is huge if you're planning on using this for mission-critical applications. You can afford 1 power supply to fail without any downtime, and that's not the only unique thing about the P10's power supply. Considering its use cases, the P10 can of course also be rack-mounted. It's definitely bigger than the P7, taking up 5U of rack space, but imagine while it's on the rack, the power supply can be swapped out without opening up the side panels. It's direct access from the exterior. This is, again, a design that speaks volumes about serviceability, and rightfully so, as the P10 was designed as a data center grade solution. It also comes standard with 3 front access bays for 3.5-inch hard drives. You could also configure these to replace each bay with a dual M.2 SSD enclosure. Depending on how you configure it, you can have up to 60 terabytes of internal storage with the P10. This also gets the most unique design in terms of airflow. The P10 has 4 fans up front and 2 fans out back. The 2 rear fans and the 2 middle fans in front are dedicated to cooling the 2 CPUs and the RAM. Those fans feed directly to and from the airflow duct surrounding these components, so there's always a constant stream of air going past them. It's almost like they've designed different cooling zones for this. There's still 1 fan to cool the components up top and 1 for the bottom. You might notice that we don't see the PSU from this side, and that's because they are behind the motherboard. The P10 is special because it gets airflow on both sides of the board. You've got the integrated fans in the PSU drawing air through the slats on the right side of the machine past the front access storage bays. Lenovo's also taken an even more modular approach with the fans on the P10. When you release them, they slide right out of the assembly. There's not even a cabled connector to unplug. Again, this is unique to the P10. Fast-free maintenance comes as standard when you go for the very best. Future expandability is also very well taken care of due to an abundance of PCI Express slots. In fact, this sits right at the cutting edge because it's got 4 PCI Express Gen 5 slots. The industry's just about to get started with PCI Express Gen 5, but these systems are already compatible, and that includes the P7 and P5 as well. Not as many slots as the P10, but the entire lineup does get PCI Express Gen 5 connectivity. So 3 ThinkStations, all immensely powerful, but each can be scaled to different heights depending on what you need. It is refreshing to see such serious workstations designed with Aston Martin's supercar DNA, but at the same time it's also wonderful to witness how they aren't exactly form over function.